What is up, guys? The Strong Boys 19 here. Today is going to be on the second episode for requested albums, and this one is a request from one of my subscribers and friends, Tyler, previously known as Greedy Selfish 97. Thank you very much, mate. He requested me to do another review that I feel anticipated to talk about. And I wanted to think about reviewing this for Classic Albums Revisited, but since that he requested this, this is still one of my all-time favourite albums. So I'm going to be reviewing the self-titled debut album by Mr. Bungle. The self-titled debut album by Mr. Bungle was released on August 13th in the year on 1991, recorded in San Francisco, California, released on Warner Brothers Records, and produced by multi-instrumentalist and Naked City member John Zorn. This album's length goes for more than an hour long, and its instrumentation is presenting a huge variety of many styles and sounds of music, from ska, circus music, heavy metal, free jazz, and funk. All music, and I quote, called it a dizzying, disconcerting, schizophrenic tour through just about any rock style the group can think of, hopping from genre to genre without any apparent rhyme or reason, and sometimes doing so several times in the same song. They also described about Mike Patton's lyrics, and I again quote, even more bizarrely humorous than those he used in Faith No More, and also less self-censored. Warner Brothers promoted the record as being Mike Patton's seriously weird new project. This album later on became very influential, especially for musicians like Monkey from Korn, and he said that it had the biggest impact on him. Mike Portnoy from Dream Theater placed it as one of his top 10 albums of all time list, and he said that it actually scared the shit out of him the first time he listened to it. Sinister Gates from Avenged Sevenfold named it one of the most incredible pieces of music he has ever heard. This band released 2 more albums before their breakup in 2004, Disco Volante in 1995 and California in 1999, and then the band reunited again in 2019. Mr. Bungle's self-titled album has always been one of my big all-time favourites in terms of just debut albums, and I would more than likely would like to do a ranking of putting this album in the top 10 of my favourite debuts of all time. So I'll be making a video on that soon, hopefully. But Mr. Bungle's first album brings so much nostalgia for me, as this was at the time that I loved quite a lot of metal bands, from obviously Slipknot to Korn, System of a Down, and Trivium, and then getting into some more of the heavier side of metal. But Mr. Bungle's music was a band that I had never ever discovered before. So I will have to say this was one of the most nostalgic trips that I've ever revisited when I played this album, because there is so much diversity and mentality on this record. The sheer brilliance of this album is that they took this really seriously, a band that never apologizes to anything they've ever done in their discography. And if you like this kind of music, then I highly would recommend it. And sometimes I would maybe mention this one as one of these very over-the-top albums, say like a few from Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band to a Frank Zappa Mothers of Invention record. This album's music just goes from various spots, from this spot being quiet, this part being so loud, this part being obnoxious and chaotic. So many words that anyone would describe this album. The first opening track, quote unquote, also by the way, the original title was going to be called Travolta, named after John Travolta, but the whole album just begins with the very quiet sound of snoring, and when you hear the glass shattering sound afterwards, it's just an immediate booming explosion of very eerie music. And this is one of the tracks that it's quite unsettling because of its weariness on the circus-ish kind of tone, and with Mike Patton's vocals going from various spots from falsetto to really high-pitched vocal notes. He was still, to me, one of the reasons why I do admire Mike Patton. And of course, with him, for me, being one of my favourite vocalists of all time, I will give a lot of the band a lot more respect than pretty much a lot of people, because when they think of Mr. Bungle, they will just think of Mike Patton than the rest of the musicians. But quote unquote is really the beginning of the whole experience. As I said, it's very eerie, and it has a lot of these frantic keyboard sections to some really good simple guitar driven sounds, to another song, the second track, called Slowly Growing Deaf, which at points has a lot of the very funky driven guitar passages to some ambient keyboards and more of the distorted guitar tones. This one is really one of my favourites. And in terms for other randomness of audio that's been recorded, they managed to just finish the song after its quiet notes, and then you hear audio of somebody rushing to the toilet taking a shit, and you can actually hear that quite clearly. Then the next track, Squeeze Me Macaroni, this one is just one of the faster, over-the-top vocal notes, does a lot of the vocal rapping from Mike's performances, and the music to it is also very catchy, and you know, it's so abrasive. And again, just like Slowly Growing Deaf, this piece of music just sometimes goes from complete mentality to more of the gentleness. I absolutely still think this is one of my top favourite Mr. Bungle tracks. The track Carousel is really the most circus music driven sound of instrumentation, and I really like some of the lyrics on these songs, but Carousel's just one of my favourites. A carnival for the human race, cotton candy happy face, a child talking with his mouth full, girlfriend gets stuffed animal. Just a very fun, like a joyous kind of sound, but then as these lyrics go by, they go into some more morbid stuff. And just like some of the later tracks on here, like on the song Stub a Dub, which is lyrically very personal, based on one of the band members' family dog, and the album's track opens with the circus keyboards, and then the opening lyrics are really about Stub being a puppy. The lines are, do you remember, we called you puppy, now you're one of us, we call you family. And the rest of the track just goes into more on the progression of Stub's age. And I also loved the bit where Mike just goes, thanks mom. That's another crazy bit. And then that frantic over-the-topness just goes on. The last lines are unfortunately ending the song on a sad note, based that Stub is now dead. Like, do you remember, we called you family, now you're underground, we call you memory. How very deep is that? The next song, My Ass Is On Fire. This one is, for me, my personal favourite Mr. Bungle track. I remember this one being the most weirdest introduction to a band that I've ever discovered. My best friend Callum at the time had played this song to me, and I had never discovered this before. Continues some more of the heaviness of the distorted riffs to some vocal effects, these high guitar notes to saxophone playing, and then the breakdown bit, especially on the few words of boo and redundant. That piece on that part at the end of the song just goes and goes and gets louder and louder to complete brutality of very unlistenable, maddening approaches of more screaming vocals and distortion and feedback and just pure noise. I absolutely love My Ass Is On Fire. Still one of my favourite nostalgic tracks. The Girls of Porn, now this one obviously being the most provocative out of all of the entire lyricism. These lyrics to this album, and I know I'm going in various spots, but these lyrics can go from really humorous and random to darkness, and as I said now, being provocative. And The Girls of Porn has a really good, tight, rhythmic instrumentation. Besides that, the track is nothing filled, but with audios of, actual pornography, sex, audio that they decided to put in during the material of the song. I do love the bridge section. I do like lyrics like, we got incest and bestiality too. We got Sade and the sweetest taboo. We've got girls who'll eat your pee and poo. And guys who'd love to fuck your shoe. It's so amazing to me that Mr. Bungle can just get away with many different stuff and put these pieces of music in all of these random spots, put them all into tape. It's incredible for me. Love is a Fist is really the heaviest track, being the shortest one musically, and then obviously with some more random audio clips of all that banter. It has more of the intensity of how groovy the song gets, and especially onto its simplicity of the structure. And Love is a Fist is the one that really inspired Monkey from Korn to make music, something like that as an early influence. Mr. Bungle's first record can be just described in many different words. Some people will get into it and love it, or some people will just call it a bunch of crap, noise, and horrible monotonous trash. Whether you would like this album or not, this album is still one of my all-time favourites. And let me know what you think of this album in the comments below. And also the production is absolutely great. I loved the guitar sounds on this record to the drums, and the pristine tone of the saxophone. The bass sounds brilliant on here, and Mike Patton's vocals just go in many various ways. It's just so great that Mike Patton is still one of my all-time favourite vocalists, and with a record like this record still defines one of Patton's greatest vocal passages. That's all I have to say about this classic self-titled debut album by Mr. Bungle. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.